Good afternoon to one and all present here. Welcome to day 3, session 3 of Atal FTP Waste Technology. Today we have with us Dr. Vijay Gandhi sir as a speaker for today's session. Now it gives me an immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Vijay Gandhi. Dr. Gandhi sir is presently working as Associate Professor with Department of Chemical Engineering, Dharm Singh Desai University since last 20 years. He received his PhD in the area of application of nanotechnology in environmental engineering from DDIT University in 2011. He is serving as an independent director of BEIL Infrastructure Limited and Enviro Technology Limited in Ankleshwar, Gujarat, India. He is also appointed as member of GPCB Committee on Identification of Material as Waste or Bioproduct. In the field of research and consultancy, he has guided several graduates and undergraduate students for their project work. He has more than 20 publication presentation in international, national reputed journal and conferences to his credit in the area of photocatalysis. Dr. Vijay Gandhi sir has edited 3 books in the area of environmental engineering, namely Photocatalytic Nanomaterials for Environmental Applications, Advances in Wastewater Treatment 1 and Advances in Wastewater Treatment 2, published by Material Research from LLC USA. His current interests are in the field of environment engineering, green technology for sustainable development, and synthesis of nanomaterial. He also organized various training programs for chemical process industries in Gujarat, including GNFC, PI Industries, Huntsman, Transpac Silox, etc. Chemical Engineering Department, Government Engineering College, Bharuch welcomes you, sir. Now, I request Dr. Vijay Gandhi, sir, to take the charge of the session. Sir, please.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Just a minute, I share my screen and just reciprocate from your end.
Okay, sir.
My screen is visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. And voice is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So can we start now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So good afternoon to all online friends. Myself, Vimal Gandhi from representing Department of Chemical Engineering, DDU, Nadiyad. Before I start my talk on case studies on heterogeneous photocatalysis, I congratulate GEC Bharuch and organizing team under the leadership of Dr. Joshi sir and Dr. Waghela sir for organizing this Atal 1 week FDP on waste technology. I am also thankful to organizers for inviting me and giving an opportunity to share my views on the case studies related to this heterogeneous catalysis topic. If time permit, I will also brief you about a new concept of circular economy with respect to waste technology. And this is also very much relevant topic with respect to sustainable development of the nation and the world. Right? So outline of my today's presentation, mainly I divide this presentation into 4 parts. In part 1, I will brief you about 17 goals of sustainable development, SDG, 17 SDG goals of the world, and also brief you about scenario of wastewater generation and treatment in India, including market of wastewater treatment. In part 2, we'll mainly focus on conventional wastewater treatment challenges and why we have requirement of advanced wastewater treatment technologies. As a part of this advanced wastewater treatment technologies, I will give you idea about advanced oxidation processes and its types. And in part 3, under heterogeneous photocatalysis. In this section, basically, I am going to discuss about mechanism of photocatalysis, various type of photocatalytic material used, various factors affecting on the performance of photocatalysis, as well as challenges and concerns that is associated in the field of heterogeneous photocatalysis, and also discuss you about some of the case study to overcome these challenges. These case studies, we carried out that research work in our laboratory at Dharamsi Desai University and accepted by world in the form of publications in reputed journals with very good number of citations. And in last part, if we have time and all of you have interest, then we will briefly discuss about circular economy and hazardous waste management. I attended a morning session also of Parmeswaran sir, and you have very good idea about hazardous waste management rules as well as how you treat this hazardous waste in the industries. But I will try to explain you about circular economy concept and how this hazardous waste that is useful as raw material, as resource, and save fuel in cement plant. So with very brief case studies, I will discuss about this topic. And at the end of the session, if you have any question related to any of the work or in between also we interact. Once photocatalysis is over, we interact and then we start new topic. It is all depend on you. So friends, now I am sure that at least you will learn basic things about heterogeneous photocatalysis with some of the case studies that we develop in the lab. But before we start photocatalysis, first I will brief you about the problem and why we have requirement of this kind of advanced wastewater treatment technologies or part of advanced oxidation processes. So as all of you are aware that sustainable development goals, that is goal collection of 17-point agenda, and it is designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all the citizens of the world. And this SDGs, this 17-point agenda that is set in 2015 by United Nations General Assembly and intended to be achieved by the next 15 years, means 2015 to achievable target year, that is before 2030 we have to achieve this goal that is passed in UN resolution 70/1 as 2030 agenda. Now friends, if you thoroughly analyze these 17 goals, if you go through all 17 points, then out of 17, 8 goals, or you can say that nearly 50% goals are directly or indirectly, it is associated with effective water management. For example, goal number 2, that is of zero hunger. That means availability of food for all. Now, for this, you have to increase your crop production. But as we know, day by day, our land that is available for crop production, it is decreased. At the same time, we require very good water irrigation system because that land availability is decreased. So with minimization of land, we have to take that sufficient amount of crops. So we need water, very good water irrigation system or water management system for the production. Also, we have to avoid, it is not part of this discussion, but just to give you idea. Also, we have to avoid certain class of chemical fertilizers and pesticides and replace that with good biofertilizers and biopesticides. That is challenge in front of all, right? Similarly, goal number 6, it is directly related to water management. The objective is clean water and sanitation. So it is required fresh water quality, effective water treatment, that is domestic water, wastewater generated, and then you have to treat that wastewater and reuse and recycle policy of this water. Goal number 7, that is affordable and clean energy. Again, it requires fresh water source, Goal number 9, industry innovation and infrastructure. Again, no need to discuss it here. We know, particularly in chemical engineering, chemical process industries, we need fresh water at various places for various purposes, in fact. Similarly, 11, sustainable cities and communities again need effective fresh water distribution and domestic wastewater treatment facility. Goal number 13, that is related to climate action. As such, no need to explain this, what is effect of climate change in this forum, because all of we are aware about its connection with water cycle on the earth. Similarly, 14 and 15, that is also life below water and life on the land. So that require effective water management. So moral of the story here is to reach this goal before 2030, it is high time to work upon effective water management, water supply, water usage, water treatment, and after treating that wastewater, water reuse and recycle policy. Now, out of all these 8 goals, if we consider one point, that is point number 6, clean water and sanitation, and check its 12-point indicator for SDG goal number 6, then you may have idea that the major focus in this point is on water quality. So here it is water quality, wastewater generation, whether it is from agricultural route, from municipal route, or from industrial requirement. So you have to depend, or you have to understand that water quality, water distribution, wastewater generation, and usability of that treated water. Now, if we want to check worldwide scenario of wastewater generation, mainly from 3 sectors, mainly irrigation, municipal or domestic, and industrial sector. Then, if you see here, this report is published by UN World Water Development Report 2017. And if you compare wastewater generation in these 3 sectors, mainly agriculture, domestic, municipal wastewater, and industrial requirement, then nearly 60% water is consumed in various forms in these 3 sectors. And out of this 60% water, approximately 40% wastewater generated. So, moral of the story here is it's high time to treat this wastewater effectively and reuse it to reduce consumption of fresh water. So this is worldwide scenario. Now you may have question, sir, what is situation in our country, India, with respect to generation as well as treatment of wastewater? So just try to understand that point also. Just check first with respect to domestic wastewater generation and treatment. So roughly 62,000 MLD, million liter per day, that is wastewater generated. Here 62,000 MLD wastewater generated, and to treat this wastewater we have facility available. It is roughly approximately around 23,000 MLD. So you can say that nearly 39,000 MLD wastewater, million liters per day wastewater, domestic wastewater, that is untreated. Or percentage wise, if you see, in municipal wastewater, approximately 60% wastewater that is untreated and discharged into water bodies. So this is huge number, significantly higher percentage. Likewise, if you take scenario with respect to industrial wastewater generation and treatment capacity, so here also, yes, slightly better percentage with respect to treatment. Here 13,500 MLD industrial wastewater generated, and nearly existing wastewater, excuse me, I think someone's mic is unmute. Uh, Hello. Thank you. Thank you. So, in industrial wastewater generation and treatment capacity, if you are talking about, then again here also we have that gap, and in India approximately 40% industrial wastewater that is discharged to the water bodies. Hello. Uh, Hello, am I
Yes, sir.
audible?
Yes. Yes, sir. You
Yes.
are clearly
Yes, sir.
audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, moral of the story or conclusion of this slide is it is high time to establish facility to treat domestic as well as industrial wastewater and reduce that percentage of untreated water to achieve that goal SDG 6 set down by United Nations. Now, on one hand, we have lack of facility to treat this domestic as well as industrial wastewater, as shown in last slide. And on another side, if you check that data of futuristic data of requirement of fresh water in various sectors, like irrigation sector, drinking water, industries, and energy, and all. So, if we talk about irrigation sector, so 20% requirement of fresh water that is increased per decade, and that is because of population growth. A similar case that is with drinking water requirement also here. So, if you are talking about industrial requirement, then again roughly 50% increment in fresh water requirement per decade it is estimated up to 2050, right? So what is moral of the story here? In future we have great requirement of fresh water, so more water requirement means more wastewater generation. More wastewater generation means you have requirement of more treatment facility and advanced technique to treat that wastewater and reuse and recycle that treated water, right? So this is one scenario with respect to futuristic scenario with respect to freshwater requirement. Now, if we want to analyze this thing with respect to business opportunity in wastewater treatment market, so approximately 2 billion US dollar market is available in year 2020 here, where industrial capex is 1.95 billion US dollar and industrial opex that is 0.05 billion US dollar. So if you make total, then it is nearly 2 billion US dollar market, and that is in coming, and this market is going to increase, no doubt about that. And if you are residing in western part of the country, that is Gujarat, Maharashtra, and so the good news is out of this total market available, western region in terms of opportunity having share of approximately 42% in the wastewater treatment market in India. So friends, if you are in the business of wastewater treatment or going to build your career future in the same area, don't worry, huge potential is available in this area of what wastewater treatment in India, right? So let's summarize our discussion of last 10 slides. So try to understand that if we want to achieve that SDG goal 6 of clean water and sanitation, so that require effective water management as fresh water demand increase in every class and sector of the society. Effective and sufficient wastewater treatment capacity is required. Once you treat that wastewater, reuse and recycle policy of treated wastewater, or you can say that from industrial viewpoint, journey towards zero discharge policy for industries that is also required. Now, we try to understand that problem. Now, what are the solutions? So, one of the probable solution is how we improve our existing wastewater treatment technologies by adopting or by combination of advanced wastewater treatment technologies. So, warning bell from UNESCO and World Water under its World Water Assessment Program, they estimated that this is not good news. In fact, they estimated that India has the lowest industrial water productivity in the world as compared to developed and developing countries. So we have poorest industrial water productivity in terms of recycle and reuse and treatment of wastewater. And in the coming years, India will face twin-age problem like unavailability of fresh water. We already seen that the fresh water requirement is going up and up, but we are going to face problem of unavailability of fresh water. So it is force us to treat the wastewater as well as generation of excess amount of wastewater because of population growth and because of industrialization. So friends, up to this point, I think it is clear, right? Now we start with next part. So what are the question here? The question is how we treat untreated domestic and industrial water using conventional wastewater treatment techniques. Is current practices of industrial wastewater treatment is capable enough to meet water norms that is laid down by GPCB or CPCB? If no, then what are the advanced methods available to improve the situation? So all these things we are going to discuss under this part 2. So in part 2, we start with a very basic example of chemical process industry, because all of us directly or indirectly are related with chemical process industry CPI. So I consider that example of chemical process industries. As we all know, water, it is considered as universal solvent in CPI, and we need fresh water starting from raw material stage to manufacturing or processing steps to finishing stage. And at the end of the process, fresh water that is converted into wastewater with change of its quality. And the quality of wastewater, it is depend on the chemical process industries. If that wastewater is coming from dyes industry, then you have different quality of wastewater. If that wastewater is coming from petrochemical or petroleum refinery industries, you have different quality of wastewater. And if it is coming from pharmaceutical or pesticide industries, you have different challenges, right? And so it is all depend on the process. And we treat this generated wastewater into conventional effluent treatment plant facility and discharge this treated water to water bodies through pipeline, right? This is conventional way where we treat that wastewater, generate that wastewater, treat that wastewater and discharge that wastewater into water bodies. So here question is the treated water meets all the requirement laid down by GPCB or CPCB board, or can we remove all the harmful components like pharmaceutical compounds, phenolic compounds, oily matters, color, aromatic carboxylic acid compounds, pesticides, such various class of pesticides from the wastewater effectively? Or still we have requirement of some additional treatment methods to meet these standards? So before I go ahead, just I want to give you brief idea about conventional wastewater treatment processes. And I am sure majority of us, we already familiar about this slide, where our conventional wastewater treatment processes are divided into three parts. First, that is preliminary and primary treatment. Mainly it includes screening, grit removal, oil removal, neutralization, coagulation, equalization steps. And here we require certain class of chemicals to remove some of the solids that is dissolved or some of the solid that is observed in wastewater. So ultimately, we have to face problem of sludge formation, handle with that generated sludge, as well as chemical requirement during the treatment. Now, that treated water from preliminary and primary treatment, it is entering to the secondary treatment, where mainly we take care of removal of organics from wastewater using suitable type of aerobic or anaerobic process. Here, main issue is it is slow process, or you can say it is time consuming process. Apart from that, the microorganism that is used all are parametric sensitive in nature. So generation and handle that microorganism, that is also class of challenge. And ultimately that sludge is formed, and disposal of that sludge, that is also one issue. Now, after secondary treatment, that treated water may contain in very minute quantities of organic compounds, but if it is there, then it is passed through tertiary treatment, or you can say polishing unit, where one very widely used method, that is adsorption based method, where we remove trace amount of that organic molecules from the wastewater along with disinfection steps if required, not in all the cases, right? So here also we try to remove that organic compound from one phase, that is from liquid, to transfer that onto another phase, that is on adsorbent solid phase. So it is not completely removal or degradation of organic compounds, but you transfer that molecule from one phase to another phase. So from liquid phase to solid phase. So this is just conventional wastewater treatment processes that is widely used in the industries, and I am sure all of you have idea about this slide. So again, we go into detailing of this. What are the challenges associated with conventional wastewater treatment techniques? Let's look at it and try to understand the problem. So challenges associated with, just I am hearing some noise. So request to mute your mic. Okay. So all of you are with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what are the other challenges that is associated with conventional wastewater treatment techniques? Let's look at it and try to understand the problem. Now, first issue, so that is related to high volume of wastewater. So normally in industries, we have to assume the wastewater generation quantity initially. We have to design that plant to and try to understand the quality of wastewater, then design your operation accordingly and try to improve the quality of wastewater, remove that impurities and try to improve quality of wastewater so that we may reuse or recycle it, right? So almost all conventional plant, effluent treatment plant, that is designed for specific flow rate and having not flexible to meet the changing need of industries, as industry has to make a predictive guess on its rate of expansion. So definitely today my requirement of wastewater handling or generation, that is different, and after 10 years if I expand my plant, then I have different requirement. But at the same time it is difficult to modify that existing one, that is existing plant, right? So either you have to make highly predictive guess of your expansion of the plant for next decades, and that is kind of wastage of critical industrial resources. Another problem, if you check, then that problem is related to complex and unpredictable nature of wastewater with respect to industries. You may have questioned how. Answer is, before 10 or 15 years, normally we have practice of one company, one product. And that is routine practice. Normally, one specific company having one product or two product or maximum three products, and it is possible to assume the water change in water quality. But in this competitive world and demand of chemicals that is increased day by day, even a small or medium scale enterprise, chemical industry, is forced to produce a large variety of products, particularly specialty chemicals. And our design and established treatment technologies that is designed decade ago or 5 years, 10 years ago, based on certain uniform wastewater stream and minimum variation is expected. So it is not matched with the change in requirement. Particularly specialty chemical industries and pharmaceutical industries produce such a wide variety of products that no single technology can meet their treatment requirements. So moral of the story is, it can be said that developments in treatment technology, once again I repeat, development in treatment technology have failed to keep pace with the development in process and synthesis technology. So on one side we have so many types of molecules in demand, and on another side, at treatment side, we are not bothered about that. Then another issue is higher chemicals flocculants consumption in particularly in preliminary and primary sections, and that leads to formation of sludge from primary section as well as from secondary section. Primary and secondary treatment consume higher amount of chemicals, flocculating agent, as well as generate sludge, and you have to dispose of this sludge into secured landfill site. In the morning session, I think Parmeswaran sir give you detail about all these things. But here also you have problem of generation of hazardous leachate, and this hazardous leachate is very complex kind of wastewater, and it is so difficult to treat it. Apart from this, higher space requirement, conventional treatment techniques require higher space, and normally in industries nobody is bothered about allocation of space for wastewater treatment. They always care about their production area. So this is one of the neglected part in the industries. And if you demand for higher space requirement, then they deny, right? So space requirement, that is always issue for conventional wastewater treatment technologies. Then apart from this, other issues related to higher energy consumption, higher capex and opex, or skilled manpower issues to handle this conventional wastewater treatment plant. So these are the challenges associated with conventional wastewater treatment technologies. Now, what are the changes that is expected, or what is requirement of advanced wastewater treatment technologies? So next generation wastewater treatment plant, they require, apart from conventional one, you have to club certain class of technologies which require lower chemical consumption or using bioflocculants in preliminary and primary section. In place of sludge disposal, that is challenge in conventional wastewater treatment technologies, you have to focus on sludge utilization. First, focus on minimum generation of sludge, and if it is generate, then you have to utilize this sludge as a resource and try to, with respect to nutrient recovery and renewable energy generation from this sludge. And some of the industries are working on this issue, and this is a very good research topic also. And finally, you treat that wastewater, then effective use of that treated water That means reuse and recycle policy of water, right? So moral of the story is we have requirement of advanced wastewater treatment technologies, and some of the advanced wastewater treatment technologies available in open literature, that is based on membrane technologies, including MF, microfiltration, ultrafiltration, reverse osmosis, and nowadays people are talking about nanofiltration, or membrane bioreactor, or thermal treatment specific, or ion exchange process. You have to develop certain class of ion and use that ions to remove class of organic or class of pollutant from the wastewater. So that is very specific ion exchange process. And various type of microbes that is developed to use into secondary treatment to remove certain organic molecules, specific organic molecules, or even in some cases metal eating microbes that you have to develop and remove that metal from the wastewater, or water oxidation, that is wet oxidation process or advanced oxidation process. So in today's presentation, my main focus that is on advanced oxidation processes, and it's one of the type. So what is advanced oxidation processes? AOPs, it is commonly known as AOPs. So AOPs is, it's utilize the high oxidizing potential of mainly hydroxyl free radicals, OH dot or OH star radicals. So you have to generate that hydroxyl radicals, and these hydroxyl radicals combine or react with your organic pollutants, and finally through intermediate route, finally complete mineralization is possible, and it is expected that that organic molecule or pollutant, it is completely converted into less harmful form of CO2 and H2O. That is your end expected end product at the end of advanced oxidation, any of the advanced oxidation processes, right? Now what are the advantage of why AOPs are required? What are the advantage of this advanced oxidation processes? So these advanced oxidation processes are effectively eliminate all class of majority class of organic compounds with the help of hydroxyl radical in aqueous phase, and rather than transferring that molecule into another phase, so it is case of adsorption, just you try to convert that organic molecule into less harmful carbon dioxide and water as an end product. At the same time, no or minimum sludge disposal issue. Of course, it is all depend on the selection of type of AOP. We'll discuss type of AOPs also. Some of the heavy metals can also remove in the form of precipitate metal hydroxide. And depending upon the selection of AOPs, in conventional wastewater treatment technologies, you have to give disinfecting step if it is required. But in some of the AOP design, disinfection can also be achieved, which make these AOPs an integrated solution to some water quality problems. We'll discuss that point in next slide also. So since the complete reduction product of OH dot, that is H2O, theoretically AOPs do not introduce any new class of hazardous molecule into the water. Now, only limitation of this AOP at present is treatment cost. And this AOPs that is under development state technology at present. So in any technology, if it is under development stage, you can take example of even mobile technology. In earlier days, before 20-25 years, even for incoming, you have to pay the rupees to service provider. But over a period of time, the technology is developed, and nowadays you know the cost of that service provider, right? So earlier it is cost of 15 to 20 rupees per minute. So when the technology is under development phase, definitely little bit cost is higher, but as research is going on throughout the world on AOPs, will try to reduce that cost, treatment cost, right? So classification of advanced oxidation processes. There are various type of AOPs reported in the literature, and mainly it is divided into two parts. One that is photochemical processes and another one that is non-photochemical processes. So in non-photochemical processes, no photon or light source is used. In non-photochemical processes, very well-known process that is Fenton process, and which is very widely used in the industry, chemical process industries. So that is one of the example of non-photochemical route. Other than this, ozonation, that is also, or ozonation with ultrasound, that is also part of non-photochemical processes. Under photochemical process, it is broadly divided into two parts. One that is homogeneous process and another one that is heterogeneous process. Under homogeneous process, you have photophantom process or UV hydrogen peroxide process, or even combination of UV hydrogen peroxide and ozone. So these are the part of these homogeneous processes. Now, my today's point of discussion, that is on heterogeneous processes, where basically we have UV light source and photocatalyst like TiO2 or suitable other class of photocatalytic material may use. So we'll discuss more and more about these heterogeneous processes in next 1 hour. Now, try to understand another way of classification. It is based on electrochemical, chemical base, light base, and radiation base, and they classified that AOPs into different class. So again, here also we'll focus on mainly heterogeneous photocatalysis. This is next part of our discussion. So summary of this part 2, I try to convey the message of limitation of conventional wastewater treatment technologies, advanced wastewater treatment. As a part of advanced wastewater treatment, advanced oxidation processes and its classification, and then we start discussion on now heterogeneous photocatalysis. So in part 3 of my talk, mainly we discuss about heterogeneous photocatalysis. And if you see this graph, it is with respect to 2019 to 14 to even 20. So check this number of publications. I take this graph from Science Direct data, and if you check that number of publications, that number of publication rate is doubled per decade. So this graph itself give you idea about importance or significance of this topic of heterogeneous photocatalysis. So under this heterogeneous photocatalysis, I will try to give you basic idea about its definition, its mechanism, type of reactor, type of photocatalyst, its application, challenges and concern, and some of the case studies. So hope all of you are with me, and if you have any doubt, any question, then feel free to discuss, or at the end we'll discuss, interact. So can I continue in part 3?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So part 3, heterogeneous photocatalysis. So what do you mean by photocatalysis? Basic definition is the rate of chemical reaction or their generation under the action of light, under the utilization of light source and solid material that is known as photocatalyst that absorb that light quanta, light source, and help to generate hydroxyl radical, and that hydroxyl radical is help you to degrade that organic molecules into CO2 and H2O. So this is IUPAC definition, but I try to explain that definition into simpler one. Then historical background with respect to photocatalysis. So first it is into the limelight in 1972 when Fujisuma and Honda from Japan that discovered the photochemical splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen in the presence of TiO2. And from this time of 1972, extensive research that is carried out and published to produce hydrogen from water in oxidation reduction reaction using a variety of semiconducting catalytic materials. Various photocatalytic material that is used or reported in the literature. So there are so many class of photocatalytic material reported, but basically the major one is zinc oxide, that is ZNO, or titanium dioxide. It is also known as titania or TiO2, or cadmium sulfide CDS, zinc sulfide ZNS. So these are the class of material it is used as photocatalyst. And then modify this material, we'll discuss it later on also, and then use some other class of photocatalytic material. So among all these semiconducting materials, titanium dioxide or titania or TiO2 is considered as one of the ideal photocatalytic material because of its non-toxic nature. It is also recognized as GRAS, that is generally recognized as safe, good photocatalytic activity, strong oxidizing power, lower cost, easy to synthesize in the laboratory by various means. I will touch upon one or two method also. And it is also working at ambient temperature and room pressure. Room temperature pressure working condition is required, and also require mild oxidizing agent like air or oxygen, right? So only issue is with TiO2, that is it does not absorb or working under visible light in general condition. I will, at the end of this talk, I will brief you about molecule specific case study where titania is working under visible light. But in general, it is believed that it does not absorb visible light. So it is working under UV light source only because of its energy band gap. It is 3.2 eV. And you may overcome this problem or address this problem by using suitable kind of impurities, add certain kind of impurities in as a dopant in bare titania, whether that is metal impurities or suitable class of non-metal doping or impurities that you have to add and modify the structure of titania. We'll discuss it later on also, right? So now question is, what is basic mechanism of photocatalysis? I try to explain it in a very simple manner, and once you understand this basic chemistry or mechanism of photocatalysis, then it will help you to go for research related to photocatalysis. So in photocatalysis, light absorbing species is semiconductor material. Say for example, titanium dioxide here. Now this titanium dioxide or semiconducting material having structure or having two class of band, one that is known as valence band, which is highest occupied band and full of electron. So here you have valence band and another band that is conduction band, that is lowest unoccupied band. And the difference in energy between these two bands is normally known as energy band gap of that semiconducting material. And For the case of titanium dioxide, it is 3.2 eV in general. When light source or photon with adequate energy, that is greater than band gap energy of semiconducting material, is absorbed by the semiconductor. So when that light that is focused on that semiconducting material, that is photon with energy band gap greater than its band 3.2 eV in the case of TiO2. So at that time, an electron from valence band, so you have to focus that light, then the electron from valence band get excited and jump to the conduction band. Now electron that is go to valence band to conduction band, so at valence band that hole is generated. Now the electron that is go to the conduction band, it is this process, electron that is taking part of photo reduction process, where it is react with oxygen that you supply as oxidant and converted that into by through series of reaction. Finally you have hydroxyl radical generation, and on the other side at valence band side, where water molecule that is react with that hole and dissociate into finally again hydroxyl generation of hydroxyl radical, and this superoxide or hydroxyl radical or H2O2 that is react with your organic molecule and convert that organic molecule into carbon dioxide and water. Right now, this titanium dioxide is used in so many areas, starting from environment to energy, air purification, electric appliance, in refrigerator or residence, in paint, in tiles it is used, in road building for removal of NOx and SOx, printing, energy conversion, water splitting. But our main focus that is on, even in medical area it is used, but our main focus that is on water treatment, water purification and wastewater treatment. It is used to remove certain class of organic contaminants, including various type of dyes, phenolic compounds, carboxylic acids, or pharmaceutical compounds, pesticide compounds, etc. Right? So now, what are the type of photocatalytic reactor that is used? So if you go through literature or go through actual industrial practices, mainly there are two type of reactor that is used, even for research or even at actual practices. So first type is slurry reactor, and another class is immobilized photocatalytic reactor. So first I try to explain you slurry reactor, and then we discuss about immobilized photocatalytic reactor. So slurry reactor that is most commonly used in water treatment at laboratory level or even at industrial level, because it shows largest photocatalytic activity as compared to immobilized type of photocatalytic reactor. Because in slurry reactor you have to add that photocatalytic material as a powder. Hello, in the powder form, so it provide you higher total surface area of photocatalyst per unit volume, and that's why it is most preferred type of photocatalytic reactor use. However, this reactor require separation of that submicron range TiO2 particles from the treated water, and which complicate that treatment process. So once that treatment process is over, you have to carry out separation of that added TiO2 powder with the help of suitable class of settling tank, or if required, use filtration operation. So this may increase the cost of treatment to recover that titanium dioxide powder. On the other side, where photocatalytic reactor with immobilized TiO2, where catalyst is fixed to support via physical surface forces or chemical bonds. Even inside on some packing material, you fix that catalytic material, or inside the reactor on the wall, you may fix that catalytic material, photocatalytic material. So advantage here is not require catalyst recovery, but at the same time, so it is possible to use this class of reactor in continuous manner, but at the same time, the available surface area for reaction is largely reduced, and that's why it is affecting on your photocatalytic performance. But yes, both class of reactor that is reported in the literature, if you go through research paper, you will find both type of reactor used, and both the reactor having their own advantage and limitations. Apart from this, nowadays people are talking about hybrid photocatalytic membrane based reactor, where this membrane technology as well as photocatalytic technology is jointly clubbed with one each other and try to use this photocatalytic material in downstream separation. So it is hybrid manner it is used. So these are the class of photocatalytic reactor preferred. Now we try to discuss what are the factors affecting on the photocatalytic reaction. When you are doing your research or when you have to decide the process, then what are the factors you have to consider that is related to performance on photocatalytic reaction? So first factor, that is with respect to catalyst loading. So as we all know, it is in general factor also, whether it is photocatalytic reaction or even it is a simple catalytic reaction. When you increase your catalyst dose or catalyst load to give treatment to wastewater or synthetic wastewater, then up to certain level, as increased load, your surface available surface area is also increased, so your degradation is also improved. But after reaching at certain level, even if you add more and more amount of catalytic material, then it is not going to help you. In fact, either it is give you constant reading or it may reduce your degradation rate. Why? Because when you put excess amount of catalytic material, then that catalytic material work as screen, and that light photon that is not easily reach on the surface, so it is of no use. So you have to optimize this parameter of catalyst loading, right? Then another point is concentration of pollutant as well as nature of pollutants. This is very important point. Whenever you try to, with fixed amount of dose, if you try to improve or increase the concentration of pollutant, then definitely your degradation efficiency or performance is decreased, right? But it is all depends on up to which concentration you are working with. Say for example, your fixed quantity is already higher, then in some cases initially it is increased and then later on it is decreased, right? And then nature of pollutants. So this is also very important point. It is all depend on the nature of chemical structure of targeted compound, because it is influence the degradation performance of photocatalytic reactor. So if the nature of that molecule is such a way that it is that adhere with that surface of the photocatalytic material and it is not easily remove or even react, then your active sites may block and you have poor performance of photocatalytic material. So you have to remove such kind of compounds from the surface, right? So similarly, for some class of aromatic material, it is again highly depend on the substitute group. The organic substance with electron withdrawing nature like benzoic acid or nitrobenzene that strongly adhere to the photocatalyst, and therefore it is more difficult to degrade as compared to electron donating groups, right? So you have to take care of this point. Then size and structure of the photocatalytic material. So obviously it is important because size that is related with your available surface area, and if you go for smaller and smaller size, your available surface area is increased, and that's why people are nowadays talking about nanocrystalline material. At the same time, structure of photocatalyst means whether it is spherical in nature or nanotube kind of nature, or even to be precise in the case of TiO2, that phase is also important, whether it is anatized phase TiO2 or rutile phase TiO2 or combination of both. So you have to take care of all such thing when you deal with the photocatalytic reaction. Apart from this, pH of the solution, yes, it is also important, and in just recent last month we published one article on this also, how pH that is also important, or how pH that is adversely affecting on degradation rate. So if you change the pH, obviously your rate of reaction that is going to change. And normally in wastewater treatment, the wastewater influent stream, it is always at either at acidic pH or at basic pH, not at neutral pH. So you have to take care of all such things. Then reaction temperature. So generally that temperature is increased, that photocatalytic activity is also increased, but you have to restrict that up to certain degree temperature and up to 60-70 degree that is reported in the literature. Otherwise, then onwards, that promotes the recombination rate of electron and hole, and that reduce your photocatalytic performance. So you have to operate your photocatalytic reactor in between 20-25 to 50-60 at the max for safer side. Now, various type of impurities, if it is present in the wastewater, like inorganic ions of magnesia, iron or zinc, copper, then this kind of impurities also reduce your efficiency of photocatalytic material. So you have to be careful before using such kind of technologies. So an important point is, finally, for any catalytic material, its life. Photocatalytic deactivation because of certain molecules that is sit on the surface of photocatalyst, and either you have to remove it. We will discuss in detail in one of the case studies also on this photocatalytic deactivation. So up to this point, I try to give you idea about basics of photocatalyst, its mechanism, what are the factors, type of reactors, type of photocatalyst. Now, what are the challenges associated in the field of heterogeneous photocatalysis? So degradation of number of organic molecules that is reported in the open literature, but still that gap is exist, and so many class of organic molecules it is not reported in the literature, and you may go for that kind of compounds and try to do research like benzoic acid, phthalic acid, phenolic compounds, pharmaceutical and pesticide compounds. It is not widely covered, right? It's effective in terms of efficiency and degradation time. That is also one of the major challenge to commercialize this process. So is it possible to improve its efficiency by doping suitable class of material and increase the rate of photocatalytic reaction? That also a debatable point, and I will discuss under case study also. So at present, TiO2, third challenge, that at present TiO2 that is working under UV light source. So is it possible to develop or synthesize material which is working under visible light source or solar light by modifying its property? Answer is yes. We'll discuss in one case study also. Then regeneration of photocatalyst, how you regenerate your photocatalytic material. So it is also a very good point of research, and we try to develop some of the method here in our lab. And apart from this, from reactor design viewpoint, this is one of the most complex system where normally three-phase system we consider that it is most complex system, solid, liquid and gas. But here one added phase that is also important, that is light source. So solid catalyst, air as oxidant gaseous phase, and wastewater that is in as liquid phase along with light source. So reactor design is also important, and if you have interest, go for CFD modeling of such kind of reactor, and you will get very quick and easy publication also if you are doing your research. So find new area of applications like conversion of carbon dioxide to useful petrochemical products. So majority of the work, if you go through literature, it is with respect to photo oxidation. So is it possible to convert that CO2 into useful petrochemical products by photo reduction? And this is very hot topic worldwide. So many companies, including big giant player in the field of petrochemicals, I don't want to name it here, they are interested in such kind of project work, research work. So these are the challenges associated with photocatalysis. And in next 35-40 minutes, I try to address you about how we try to overcome these challenges at our laboratory. And before that, just try to give you idea, because nowadays people are talking about nanotechnology. So nano photocatalyst or nanocrystalline material is synthesized in the laboratory. So our domain of research is synthesis of nanocrystalline material, modified TiO2 also, and use that TiO2 in the degradation of some particular class of pollutant. So this is, and that's a nanomaterial having their own advantage, nanocrystalline material, not directly nanomaterial. So that's why we are focusing on nanocrystalline material synthesis, its characterization, and then finally application to degrade certain class of molecules. So friends, we go through some case studies, and in last 1 hour, I try to give you idea about starting from importance of wastewater treatment technologies to heterogeneous photocatalysis, and hope you are enjoying the talk. So now we switch over to case studies, where I'm going to give you idea about first case study, where we focus on synthesis of titanium dioxide and check its activity, its properties as well as its activity with respect to aromatic carboxylic acids. And we published this paper in GIEC journal. And what is motivation of this work? You may have questions, sir, why you start this work? So answer is, one of the paint company, very reputed paint company in Ankleshwar, facing problem of removal of phthalic acid from wastewater. Even after tertiary treatment, they found that phthalic acid is in the wastewater, and how you remove that? That is one challenge. Apart from that, again in South Gujarat based or very well-known industrial group in petrochemical sector is also facing issue of removal of terephthalic acid from the wastewater. And in some of the pharmaceutical industries, they use benzoic acid and its derivatives, aromatic carboxylic acids, in their process, and they observe that it is in wastewater stream. So all these factors motivate us to go for research associated with aromatic carboxylic acids and particularly phthalic acid. So we start this work at our laboratory, and how we deal with this? What are the objectives? So our first objective is to synthesize nanocrystalline titanium dioxide, then characterize this titanium dioxide to ensure its property, and then finally use this titanium dioxide to degrade various aromatic carboxylic acids like phthalic acid, benzoic acid, orthochlorobenzoic acid, orthonitrobenzoic acid at our laboratory. So, and even we studied various operational parameters and its kinetics also. So we synthesize this titanium dioxide in lab by using sol-gel method. So sol-gel method, it is one of the widely used method for the synthesis of nanomaterials. because of its advantage of simplicity, as well as it is possible to synthesize your material at normal temperature and pressure. Even though some of the difficulties are also associated with sol gel method, but this is one of the very good method to start your research with, where we use titanium tetraisopropoxide TTIP, commonly known as TTIP, and use methanol as a solvent, and hydrolyzing agent aqueous ammonia we are taking. This reaction is carried out at room temperature, and pH that is associated with 9 to 10, because we are using aqueous ammonia hydrolyzing agent. So you have to carry out your reaction in the pH value of 9 to 10. Once again, I want to make one point very clear. If you change your pH value, that is also part of separate discussion, in fact, but your property of material may going to change. So be careful when you handle such kind of experiment. And then whatever gel that is formed, that is titanium hydroxide, you have to dry that titanium hydroxide to remove water. So dry it at 80 to 100 degrees centigrade in air oven, and then finally the titanium hydroxide is calcined at 400 to 650 degrees centigrade at the interval of 50 and then 100. So we try to synthesize that material, calcine that material at 400, 450, 550 and 650 degrees centigrade. And we do characterize this material, synthesize TiO2 with XRD, FTIR, thermal analysis and surface area analyzer. So first XRD spectra. So if you check this XRD spectra of TiO2, then you observe very intense peak of anatized phase at nearly 25.52 theta value. So here this is peak of anatized phase, and this is uncalcined material. No peak is observed. TiOH4. Then you calcine that material at 400 degrees centigrade. You observe that peak. Then at 450 degrees centigrade, that peak is observed along with very small formation of another peak. And then at higher temperature, 550, you have anatized phase peak that is decreased and another peak that is increased. So this peak at around 27.5 degree 2 theta value, it is for rutile phase. And finally at 650, anatized phase is disappear and you have only rutile phase. So what is significance of all these peaks and data? Try to understand. We give sample name that is T400, 450, 550, 650 and anatized phase. So if you see here, you have 100% anatized material, the sample which is calcined at 400 degrees centigrade. You may have questions, sir, why you start with 400? Why not with 350 or 300? I will give you answer also later on in next two slides. So here you have zero rutile phase. So it is expected or it is reported in literature that anatized phase is most active phase of TiO2, and with crystallite size of 23 nm, and as your available surface area that is 37 meters square per gram, and as your temperature, calcination temperature increase, your crystallite size is also increased because of that agglomeration of the particles, and it is stick with each other, and that's why your available surface area is also decreased. At the same time, the increase in calcination temperature, it leads to increased formation of rutile phase. So that means that photocatalytic material, it is of not that much active. So you have to be careful when you decide your calcination temperature. Now, this is very commonly used FTIR spectra of TiO2, where you observe that broad absorption peak appear at nearly 3400 centimeter inverse, which is stretching vibration of surface OH group, and at 1620 here, at around 1620, it is band assigned to water, that is also appear. And if you go into detail of that, then here also you have at 430, you observe that 430 centimeter inverse, you observe that TiO band peak of TiO2 lattice. So this is very commonly used FTIR spectra to just confirm whatever that we synthesize, it is TiO2 only. Then we do thermal analysis and we observe weight loss of that TiOH4 sample. And if you see this spectra, you observe that weight loss is around 150, that is intense weight loss, that is because of removal of water and solvent. And then finally, at sharp decrement in weight that is observed at this is because of its crystallization start. And TiOH4 that is start to convert into TiO2. And if you check this value is 400 degrees centigrade. So we start our calcination temperature from 400 degree and onwards, right? So this is thermal spectra, thermal analysis of synthesized TiOH4 in the lab. Then we carry out that experiment into lab by using photocatalytic slurry type of reactor, where we use inner tube reactor. Inside that we have UV bulb, 125 watt Philips bulb. Then for air supply, we put air supply through compressor. Agitator we provided to make that uniform suspension of catalytic material inside the reactor. And we take 400 ml of reactor volume and take sample at interval of time and analyze that sample with the help of HPLC C8 column with acetonitrile water solvent 50-50 percentage. And this inner side where we keep our bulb, that inner side, this tube, it is of quartz tube that create pass only through UV light, that is pass and focus on this slurry reactor. And targeted compound, mainly we targeted phthalic acid along with some of the carboxylic, aromatic carboxylic acids. So we carry out or we monitor operating parameters like calcination temperature, dose, concentration, kinetic study, and degradation of various aromatic carboxylic acid. So if you see here, effect of calcination temperature, so we take two samples, that is calcine at 400 degrees centigrade and 550 degrees centigrade. And you see here its activity. The sample which is calcined at 400 degrees centigrade degrade greater than 90% of phthalic acid. Initial concentration is 100 milligram per liter, 100 ppm in just less than 2 hour time. So, and the another sample which is not giving you good result. And now I think no need to give you reason why it is so. Because that calcination 550 degrees centigrade sample having less surface area as well as rutile phase observed. If you see or remember this slide of discussion, you have half of the surface area, that is 16 meters square per gram, the sample calcine at 550 as compared to sample calcine at 400, as well as in 400 you have anatized phase 100%, here you have only 40%, which is more active, catalytically active phase. So try to understand the point where we first decide which sample is best. So we decide that sample which is in calcined at 400, it is best one to go ahead. And then we try to evaluate catalyst loading effect. So as that catalytic loading increase, that is 1 to 2.5, that degradation rate is also increased. But when we further increase, double that catalyst loading at 5 gram per liter, then almost similar degradation rate that we observe. And if you remember our last 1 hour discussion, I already briefed you about the higher dosage of photocatalytic material if you take, then you may observe screening effect. The light which is not penetrate enough and focus on the surface of catalytic site. That's why your rate of reaction, it is not that much improved. In fact, it is almost constant, or it hinders your rate of reaction, right? So effect of initial concentration of phthalic acid, yes, that concentration is increased with fixed amount of dose, then obviously that rate of degradation, that is decreased. And kinetic study, it is follow Langmuir-Hinshelwood first order reaction, and we try to find K value, reaction rate constant also for phthalic acid. Apart from that, we carried out one experiment for phthalic acid, nitrobenzoic acid, chlorobenzoic acid, and benzoic acid. And we observed that in bare solution of phthalic acid with fixed dose of TiO2, which is adsorbed 4.5% after 1 hour, that is highest one, and least adsorb, that is in benzoic acid. Now, what is significance of this value? You will understand after one slide. We try to check all these 4 aromatic carboxylic acid compounds to degrade from synthetic wastewater, and we observe that the removal rate that is highest in the case of phthalic acid, which is followed by orthonitrobenzoic acid, then orthochlorobenzoic acid, and last one or least degraded product, that is benzoic acid. And in the same paper, even we propose mechanism also. I am not going to cover all the details here, but we propose mechanism also. If you have interest, you go through this publication, and this is very good publication to understand. But important point is the material, the aromatic carboxylic acid that is adsorbed more on the surface of catalytic site is give you best result, and the least adsorbed one that gives you least result. So that we know in catalysis also, right? So we try to find effect of that group on photocatalytic degradation, and we find that higher sorption and strong interaction with titanium dioxide surface in the case of phthalic acid, that gives you best result, or in case of benzoic acid, which is give you least result. Along with this, we propose that mechanism also, but I don't want to cover that mechanism here. Degradation pathways in 4 cases. Now, so moral of the story is we successfully synthesized titanium dioxide at 23 nm particle size with 100% anatized phase. Then the nanocrystalline material that we synthesize is effective to degrade phthalic acid. 95% removal of phthalic acid that we observe, that is highest one, and in the case of benzoic acid, that is only 28%, and we discuss that reason also. So the order of degradation we already discussed, and the reactivity of this aromatic carboxylic acid that is affected by nature of substitutes present on the aromatic ring. The aromatic carboxylic acid having electron withdrawing groups like carboxylic group or nitro or chloride group that present at ortho position of ring, that is highly reactive. Whereas if you don't have that such kind of group on the molecule on the ring, then it is least degraded. So at ortho position, I'm talking about ortho position, and that's why this paper is published in very good journal. So case study 1, then another case study. Now friends, again you may have question why you go for silver doped titanium dioxide. We already discussed that bare titanium dioxide having limitation with respect to its activity. So how you improve that activity of bare titanium? So for that you have to understand the mechanism of titanium dioxide, where electron and hole pair recombination is observed. If you are in position to stop that electron hole recombination by any method, then your catalytic activity may enhance. So we try to overcome this limitation by adding suitable kind of dopant, and we take this silver as a dopant from the literature, and our objective is different also. Other than this, we try to check this silver doped titanium dioxide in textile industry also, because it is antimicrobial agent. So but it is different story here. Our focus is on wastewater treatment. So we develop one method, single step synthesis doping method of silver into titanium dioxide, and I am happy to inform you it is published in INDC journal. This is very reputed industrial and engineering chemistry research, ACS journal, and with very good citation. In just last 4-5 years, we are cross 100 citations, nearly 150 citations, near to 150. So same method, but we use doping material silver nitride in the various range 1% to 5%. Otherwise, almost similar method that we use to synthesize TiO2, but we try to dope that silver into TiO2 structure. And if you check here, we are getting very good result with respect to doping material. So if you check pure titanium dioxide here, you have wide particle size distribution. Whereas in case of, if you are talking about silver doped material, you have control on that property of crystallite size. And we'll discuss that on in next slide also. This is carried out by DLS method. So if you see here, particle size at different temperature, calcine at different temperature. So in the case of 1% Ag dop material, the particle size that is 54 nanometer. And then as doping increase, your particle size that may also increase because of the over deposition of silver on the surface that increase its diameter. So try to check here, even if you look towards SAM and EDEX image. So we try to synthesize 1% silver, but really 1% doping that is possible, or you may have different class. But if you check this EDEX, then you have idea that 0.89 percentage atomic percentage that is dop. And very beautiful SAM image, almost spherical particle that you observe in this image. So we use this TiO2, doped TiO2, silver doped TiO2 material for the degradation of phthalic acid. Same reactor and everything, method analysis same, everything is we already discussed. But just important point is result. So as compared to pure titanium dioxide, here we observe that with 1% silver doped titanium dioxide, in 30 minutes just we try achieve nearly 60% removal. So very fast removal is observed, and for that you may have question, what is role of silver as dopant? So silver that is sit on the surface of photocatalyst, and earlier just try to understand the absence of silver. So electron that is transferred from valence band to conduction band, and electron is taking part in photo reduction here, and photo oxidation hole is taking care here, but it is again recombined. That recombination rate of electron hole, it is very fast in terms of even nanosecond. So you have to change that rate to increase the performance of photocatalyst, and that's why we put silver here. So silver that is working as an intermediate step because it is Ag plus. So electron that is electron is having minus negative charge, it is attract towards silver, and you reduce rate of recombination of this silver doped material, and that's why you will get very good result that is reflected on this slide. So this is role of silver, and we reported in more detail in our published article. So it is just to give you idea. So conclusion here is, likewise you may add various metal into various class of metal oxide like zinc oxide, zirconia, Fe2O3, and it is possible to even control on homogeneous particle size. That is one of the major challenge in nanotechnology, nanomaterial synthesis. And 1% silver is having better catalytic activity than higher doping. And higher doping, why it is reduced that rate of degradation? Because that block your active sites. So another case study, that is case study 3, where we use different method of synthesis. In last two method, we focus on sol-gel method, sol-gel technique. Here we are using hydrothermal method of our synthesis of titanium nanotube, titania nanotube, TNT. And this work we are carried out at CSM CRI Bhavnagar, collaboration of CSM CRI Bhavnagar. And try to understand that titanium nanotube synthesis, we successfully synthesized that TNT from bare titania by using hydrothermal method. And hydrothermal method, that is kind of higher temperature, higher pressure method. So that change morphology of the bare titania. And if you check this TAM image, if you see this image, you will see how beautifully that titania nanotube TNT is formed, and check that diameter of the nanotube as well as wall thickness here. So diameter, that is 8.3 nanometer. Just imagine, and wall thickness, it is 2 nanometer. So here you have that overall picture of beautiful TAM image of titania nanotube. And we use this titania nanotube. Before I go ahead, just we compare this titania nanotube with existing based TiO2 available in the market, and that is Degussa P25, having surface area 54 meters square per gram. It is very well known fact that Degussa having 50 to 52 meters square per gram surface area. This is very well known photocatalytic material available in over worldwide, in world market. And our synthesized TNT having surface area increased by roughly 3.5 times, 3.5x, and 185 meters square per gram. And we use this TNT for the removal of 4-chlorophenol. And you observe that here, in the case of Degussa and our TNT, we get higher performance of degradation of 4-chlorophenol with TNT as compared to Degussa P25. And even Degussa P25 is that company is happy with this kind of research work, and they provide us all technical support of supplying materials or characterization and everything. So this is we improve that surface area of the material here. Now, apart from these three case studies, during our case studies we observe that catalyst photocatalytic material is deactivated after second or third cycle, even Degussa P25 for particular class of catalytic organic molecule. It is fastly degraded. So we take it as challenge. We try to study that reason why that is deactivated fast, as well as how we regain its activity. And we try to explore 2-3 methods of activation, regeneration, and then report it to the open literature and publish that in JIEC journal. So try to understand, we take Degussa P25 model pollutant phthalic acid. We use 3 type of regeneration method: simple water and methanol wash, thermal treatment, and washing with hydrogen peroxide. And we carry out 3 number of cycles for experimental work and try to share that results. So in case of PTiO2 first cycle, this is nearly 90% removal, then second cycle and third cycle. Now we use this reuse catalyst, we treat with just water and methanol wash. So in second and third cycle, we are getting almost 30% efficiency. So this method is not suitable for regeneration. Then we carry out thermal method. We heat that use material at 350 degrees centigrade, and then reuse it. So we are getting good activity up to 85 in second cycle and nearly 74 in third cycle. Then still we are not satisfied and we want to regain its original activity. So we give hydrogen peroxide wash to the used material, then again water wash to the used material, and finally we reuse that catalytic material, and we are getting almost similar activity for second and third cycle also. So we try to explore this reason also, and why this, what is role of this hydrogen peroxide to regain its activity. So we found that in fresh catalyst we have carbon content nil. This is for Degussa. In our spent catalyst, we observe that carbon content is 1.8 weight %. And in regenerated catalyst, by various methods, that carbon content, the catalyst that is regenerated by water and methanol, almost equal carbon content. So that activity is not restored. Then in thermal method, again 0.5 weight % carbon content, so its activity improve. And finally in hydrogen peroxide, we are getting just 0.1% carbon content, so its activity is restored. At the same time, no point of discussion here, but zeta potential value of fresh catalyst is -20, and again the treated hydrogen peroxide, it is again near to -20. So that indicates that, yeah, your regenerated catalyst is restored its original property by treating with hydrogen peroxide and then water wash. So this is also very good work that we publish. Now, up to this point, we discuss about the titanium dioxide material which is working under UV light source. Now, our objective is how we try to overcome this limitation of UV light source, because UV light source that is harmful, costly, and even though this method is good, but with certain challenges. So is it possible to modify its property such a way that it is working under visible light source or solar light source? So we take it as challenge and receive one project from GPCB Gandhinagar and develop visible light active photocatalyst which is working under LED light source in our laboratory. On the other side, still majority of our work that is related to wastewater, and we want to start work on conversion of carbon dioxide into useful petrochemicals in near future. That is also very good hot topic to do research. But before that, just look at towards the data. If you check publications related to visible light active material, photocatalytic material from 2009 to 2018, almost 3 times increment that you observe in this area. That indicates that the research trend is to develop visible light active material, and that's why we take it as challenge in 2017, and we successfully synthesized that material in our lab. And I just try to give you idea about such kind of photocatalytic material. So just in last month, November 21, we published this article in Photochemical and Photobiological Science, where we try to develop CuTiO2, copper doped titanium dioxide material, to change its property working under visible LED light. And targeted molecule that we consider is levofloxacin, because nowadays in COVID era, the use of antibiotics that is increased so many times, and that levofloxacin that is observed in wastewater, industrial wastewater, as well as or antibiotics that is observed in industrial wastewater as well as in domestic wastewater. So we focus on this kind of pharmaceutical molecule and synthesize Cu, copper doped TiO2. Why we take copper here? Because in silver doping we observe that silver that is costly one. So you may have argument that silver that is very costly method. So what to do? So to make it cost effective, we choose another class of dopant, that is copper metal. And here we change method of synthesis also, because during our experimental work we observe that Sol-gel is very easy method to carry out at laboratory level, but you do not have any control on particle size because of agglomeration. So we go through literature, try to understand the basics of chemistry, and then synthesize material with the help of modified Sol-gel method, that is reverse micellar based modified Sol-gel method. And by using this method, we try to develop titanium dioxide doped with copper. So in this method, first we synthesize reverse micelle nanocarriers, then Sol-gel reaction that is taking place. So first we take hexane toluene and titron X surfactant, mix it well, then take copper nitrate solution, slowly added into the reverse micellar. So swollen reverse micellar observed, and then we use titanium dioxide, titanium tetraisopropoxide, TTIP as a precursor added in that swollen reverse micelle. Hydrolysis is taking place, and finally we have such kind of gel formation in the beaker. We separate it out and centrifuge and dry at 150 degrees centigrade for 18 hours. Then finally TiOH4, that is calcined at 400 degrees centigrade 4 hours in muffle furnace. So we have TiO2 and copper doped TiO2 material. So we synthesize both class of material. Here we have pure TiO2, and here we have 0.258% copper top TiO2, 0.5, 0.75 and 1% copper dot CuTiO2. Now we try to check its activity, and before that just I summarize its property. We observe that crystal size, if you remember in Sol-Gel method we are getting crystallite size around 23 to 25 nanometer. Here we are getting crystallite size in single digit for all the cases. So we have better control on size, and that's why its surface area is also increase, and it is nearly 70 meters square per gram in the case of 0.5 copper doped TiO2, and all the properties are better in 0.5 copper doped TiO2. We use this material to carry out our degradation work for levofloxacin. So very good SEM spectra of copper doped material with particle size 11 nanometer we calculate mean size, and then we use this synthesized TiO2 material for the degradation of levofloxacin, and we are getting very good result with 0.5 copper doped material. So higher degradation efficiency that is observed in case of 0.5 copper doped material. Other than that, we are performing experiments for various operating parameters like nanomaterials of 0.25 copper doped, 0.5, 0.75 and 1%, and we have different data. Then initial pollution concentration we are checking 25 ppm, 50 ppm and 100 ppm. Same trend we observe that we discuss. Then we are expecting catalyst loading. Again loading is increased, degradation is improved in the case of 0.5 gram per liter to 2 gram per liter. And effect of LED light source, here we check effect of light source, where we use two type of light source, 14 watt LED light source and 40 watt LED light source. And we observe that as your LED intensity is increased, your photocatalytic activity is also increased, and we ensure that this is because of effect of photocatalyst, not because of light, and for that we put that run of photolysis also in reported paper, and this paper is just in accepted and under article under in press, and maybe in 1 month this is available in open literature. So in this paper we try to identify pathways of levofloxacin degradation, and we found that through LC-MS spectra we found that the levofloxacin degradation is carried out by 4 to 5 ways, 6 ways, through defluorination, through demethylation, through decarboxylation, through ring opening of papazirin substitute, oxidation of it. So we carried out this LC-MS spectra and report it into open literature, and finally it is converted into CO2 and H2O, that is hypothesis. So friends, I am hope all of you are enjoying this session, and I'm not bored you, because I'm not getting response also at the same time from your side. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So hope all of you are enjoying the session, right?
Yes,
So,
yes, sir.
okay, once again I share my screen is visible. My screen is visible.
Yes, yes, sir. Screen is visible.
Okay, so our another article that is in press and it is selected in Material Letters last month in November, and here we are reporting another different mechanism. Up to this point, we discussed that TiO2 is not working under visible light because of its energy band gap of 3.2 eV. But surprisingly, we found that the synthesized TiO2 that is working under visible light source for particularly this molecule levofloxacin, and this levofloxacin promote one mechanism that is known as LMCT, that is ligand to metal charge transfer, and this levofloxacin molecule itself work as dopant and enhance the performance of TiO2 under visible light source. And we reported just last month it is accepted, and this is very interesting phenomena that we find in the case of levofloxacin. So here the catalyst loading is 1 gram per liter, and that initial pollutant concentration is increased, degradation is slightly reduced, but yes, we are getting this degradation under visible light source. Once again I repeat, it is bare titania, it is not doped titania, and still we are getting visible light activity. So, and for catalyst loading and effect of pH as we discussed, but then we try to identify why it is so, why it is happened that TiO2 that is working under visible light source, and we find that why this TiO2 is working under visible light source because of this LMCT mechanism. I'm not going into detail of FTIR spectra, but this LMCT mechanism, the levofloxacin that is attached with this molecule TiO2 at different pH with different site, and at pH 7 it attaches with this TiO2 through this N bond, which act as a carrier to trap that electron, and its activity that we find under visible light source. And because of our this finding, it is accepted for publication, and this is very interesting result. In fact, we prove it through different FTIR spectra also, but as it is not required here, so I am not going into detail of that. Even energy band gap also we find and then report it to the open literature. So here also we find activity under visible light. So almost all kind of or all class of titanium dioxide material we synthesize, we try to apply that material for different class of pollutants. You may have questions, sir, some still dyes, various type of dyes are missing. It is not like that. We synthesize, we use this material for the degradation of alizarin cyanine green, acid orange 7, reactive red 195, reactive black 5, but because of time limitation, it is difficult to go through all the materials here. But I just recently published one article on different class of TiO2, that is black TiO2. As such, TiO2 is white material, but we try to synthesize black TiO2 material so that its light absorption capacity is increased, and because of that you may get better degradation efficiency. To improve its efficiency, that is our target. And just in last January 2020, it is published in one of the most reputed journal in the field of chemical engineering journal, and with 1 year, within 1 year we are getting 72 citations of this review article, and two another publication that is expected in next 2-3 months. So we carried out review articles also, various review articles that is accepted for publication. So summary of my talk, I'm focused on 17 goal agenda for sustainable development, wastewater generation problem in India, need of advanced wastewater treatment technologies, about advanced oxidation processes, about heterogeneous photocatalysis and its mechanism, challenges associated with photocatalysis, and various case studies that we carried out at BDU and that is accepted in research community. So as just in introduction, Rohit sir, I think mentioned that I edited 3 books, particularly on photocatalytic nanomaterials for environmental application, advances in wastewater treatment 1 and 2 in last few 2-3 years. So if you have any doubt, any question with respect to photocatalysis, please feel free to discuss. The session is open for question answer, and then if we have time and you have interest, because I think nearly 1 hour 45 minutes I am talking, and so you may also bored. I don't know about your reaction, but if you have time, then we may go for some another topic also. But before that, like to address your queries or questions related to photocatalysis. So friends,
Participants, kindly ask the questions if you have any queries.
any
Sir,
doubt?
I have a question. One question.
Please.
Sir, other than the TiO2, which are the other catalysts used for the photocatalysis?
If you go through literature, there are so many class of photocatalytic material explored. Apart from TiO2, zinc oxide, that is very widely accepted, and still that area is open to carry out research. Titanium dioxide, it is so many work already done, so it is difficult to publish. But yes, zinc oxide, zinc sulfate, CDS, even some other class of bismuth based material, that is also people are trying. So if you go through literature, you will find so many class of photocatalytic material. But yes, every material having their own advantage and limitations. So you have to do your literature survey thoroughly and then identify which kind of material you want to use.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Uh, Anybody else? Anybody having any question with respect to photocatalysis or your feedback with respect to the lecture? Dear participant, my objective is to I initiate this work is to do good research in our universities, because it is important to do good research carried out at all the universities to compete our neighbor countries, right? So that is our major objective, and we are doing almost all class of photocatalysis work here. So if you have any doubt, or uh, if uh, if it is possible for me to address your queries.
Hello, sir.
Please.
Sir, mostly in this photocatalytic degradation, mostly batch reactors is used, maybe in slurry or immobilized photocatalytic reactor. Sir, how we can we continue this process?
Yes, we carried out that continuous type of reactor in our lab also. I have not touched upon that case studies because of time limitation. But yes, we carried out that reaction. And for that, you have to go for immobilized type of photocatalytic reactor, where you have to stick your photocatalytic material or prepare coating of photocatalytic material on certain packing material, and then use that packing inside the reactor and pass your material or liquid continuously through that bed. So you will get continuous one. It is possible.
Sir,
Yes,
is there
if you are
any
talking about performance, if you are talking about catalytic performance with same amount of catalytic material, you will get very good result in slurry reactor. That is very well known fact as compared to immobilized reactor. Otherwise, it is possible. And there are certain challenges associated with continuous type of reactor. That's why if you go for open literature, you may find very few articles on continuous type of reactor.
right? And sir, is there any necessary to deposit the catalyst at nano level in immobilized photocatalytic reactor?
No, it is not like that. But important point is the property of material that is associated with the performance. And As such, photocatalytic material facing one issue of available surface area, that is 50 meters square per gram in the case of Degussa P25. So if you go for some other size of material, then your surface area is going to decrease, and ultimately you may lose your photocatalytic performance or activity.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mangesh. And anybody, if you have any question or doubt?
Participants, if you have any question, you can unmute yourself and directly interact with sir. I think there are no more questions, sir, now.
Okay. So can we stop here?
Yes, sir. I will conclude the session. Thank you so much, sir, for such a knowledgeable and informative session. You have explained very well about the sustainable development goals, wastewater treatment, whether it is in the conventional form or advanced form using the photocatalytic. And you have also explained in detail about the different types of heterogeneous photocatalysis used in the recent wastewater treatment methods. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and enlighten us. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure to give this talk on the invitation of my friend Waghela sir. So I'm always with you whenever it is required. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So now we end the sessions. All the participants, you can leave now.